can try and win championships, and that's what it's all about. When you look from the outside and you watch this team, I know we're going to have a real good, solid hockey team this year.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my beautiful co-host, Eric Wilson, today. And of course, we're bringing you some Rangers discussion. We're going to be talking about the kid line, but the kid line no more. It seems like the kid line is being broken up in the 2022 season. There are some changes to be made to the Rangers lines this upcoming season, and we're going to talk about it. You know, free agency was interesting. The Rangers went out there, spent a boatload of money on Vincent Trocheck, and of course, a lot of adjustments have to be made to the Rangers lines now after free agency. So we kind of want to recap what moves the Rangers made and project what the lines will look like in 2022. But before we do that, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Anthony. You know, it's good to be back. It's been far too long since me and you sat here and discussed the Rangers together. We each did a couple solo episodes. Didn't feel right. But now, the dynamic duo is back, and I'm ready to talk about the kid line.
All right, let's go. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's talk about the kid line. First of all, let's recap the stats of the kid line, starting with Lafreniere in 2021. 79 games played, 19 goals, 12 assists, 31 total points. Capo Caco, 2021 stat line, 43 games played, 7 goals, 11 assists, 18 games played. And Hedel, 67 games played, 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points. So, of course, you have them all scoring at least 18 points. Kako, of course, dealt with a lot of injuries, only played in 43 total games. I think he was injured at 3 separate points in the season. But, of course, he's a restricted free agent this offseason, and the Rangers are negotiating to bring him back, to the surprise of some fans. After the Eastern Conference Finals, he was a healthy scratch in Game 6. His future with the Rangers was in doubt. Many fans believe that the Rangers were trying to move on from Capo Caco, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Apparently, the Rangers and Caco are negotiating. They're working towards a 2-year bridge deal worth around $2 to $2.5 million average annual value, and Eric and I are both hoping to see the Rangers get that deal done and lock Capo Caco up for the next couple of years. But Eric just ran through those stats. Who was the most impressive member of the kid line to you in the 2021-22 season?
Overall, I'd probably say Lafreniere impressed me the most. All three of them have had pretty slow starts for their careers. Especially with Lafreniere and Kako being drafted first overall and second overall, respectively. You kind of expected them to come into the league with a little more energy and put up a lot more points than they have. But, not everyone's Connor McDavid who comes into the league and instantly puts up 100 points. They do have to develop a little bit. And we're reaching the point in their careers where they really need to start showing that point production. They've been in the league for a very long time now, and they've been improving slowly. But if they don't have that breakout year, then it kind of just leaves their future in question. Lafreniere putting up 31 points in almost a full season, those are pretty solid numbers. I would like to see him score maybe 40 to 50 points next year. Being a first overall pick, you kind of have to show that point production. But most disappointing, I mean, it would hurt to say Kako because he only got to play in half the season due to injury. So I won't say him. I'll definitely say Philip Hedel. Throughout the regular season, I thought Philip Hedel was horrible. I reached a point, like I said last episode, where I was ready to trade him at the trade deadline for a more solid third line center. But then the playoffs came around and he really improved his play throughout the playoffs, as well as the entire kid line did. So I have a little bit more faith in Hedel. Hopefully, he'll be able to continue this accelerated play next regular season, and it wouldn't just be like a one-time fluke. But overall, the kid line, they're a pretty solid group of guys. Unfortunately, they will have to be broken up, mainly due to the fact that Vetrano and Kopp are not returning next season. So, as Gerard Gallant said, he does strongly expect Lafreniere and Kako to both have top 6 roles in the upcoming season. So hopefully, moving up to the top 6, it'll definitely help them improve their chances of becoming the better players that we all expect them to be.
Yes, sir. Let's hope to see them continue to improve. They're so young, limitless potential for the kid line. The kid line no more, though, as I said. But all of the players that used to play in the kid line, limitless potential. And, of course, you mentioned Philip Hedel and potential trades. You were ready to trade him at the trade deadline. And let's not completely rule out the possibility of Philip Hedel one day being traded. I know that's something that you definitely touched on in your solo episode. And talking about Philip Hedel, he's kind of stuck now because he was third line, and then the hope was maybe he could one day move up to the second line. But now that Vincent Trocheck just signed this 7-year mega deal with the Rangers, Filipino is kind of stuck in that third line. There's really no room for improvement. He's not going to jump all the way up to the second or first line over Trocheck or Zibanejad. So it's going to be tough for Filipino to have much growth in this league, which is kind of disappointing because we're talking about limitless potential with these guys, and Hedel seems to have had his potential somewhat capped already in the short amount of time that he's been in the NHL. So don't sleep on him as a potential trade deadline candidate for the upcoming 2022-23 season. Definitely could see the kid line get broken up even further with Filip Hedel departing. But of course, as you mentioned, Lafreniere, probably the most impressive player on the kid line. And we're going to jump into Eric's projected lines for the 2022-23 season. And Lafreniere actually ends up on his first line. First line as follows: Kreider, Zibanejad, Lafreniere. Second line: Panarin, Trocheck, Kakko. Third line: Blais, Hedel, Kravtsov. Fourth line: Hunt, Goodrow, and Reeves. Very interesting lines that you got there, Eric. Let me know what your thoughts are on Lafreniere potentially making it all the way up to the first line, and any other comments you have to make about your projected lines.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, we definitely do have that gap due to Vetrano and Cop leaving. So someone's got to fill that role. And if there's one person I can think of, it's got to be Lafreniere. He has definitely showed the most promise out of anyone on the kid line. And it's a little bit of a risk putting him that high up. This like due to the fact that he hasn't put up that many points in his career thus far. But if there is one thing that could help propel him to first overall caliber, like he's supposed to be, it will be playing on the first line. It'll be him getting the most ice time out of anyone, playing alongside Zibanejad and Kreider. The times that Lafreniere is on the ice more, he plays better. Having him tucked away in the bottom six isn't really going to help him develop anymore, which is why I then also have Kakko up on the second line. Like, this is all contingent on the fact that Kakko resigns, but all signs, as you said, are pointing to the fact that he will sign on a 2-year deal very soon. And like it's the same story with Kako. He's been tucked away, hasn't put up that many points. He's put up the least amount of points out of anyone in the kid line. But playing against like an elite playmaker like Panarin and an elite center like Trocheck, like it'll do is just help him improve. Now, Hedel, as you referenced, he's kind of stuck on the third line. I can't really see him moving up to the second line unless either Trocheck gets injured or Trocheck just plays so poorly, like beyond worse than Ryan Strome levels of bad play. Then he's going to be stuck down there, which is why he might explore a trade in the future. But for now, that's where he's going to be. And I definitely see him playing along Sammy Blais and Vitaly Kravtsov. There's kind of like the mediocre guys on our team. As far as where that leaves Hedel, I'm not sure. I don't know how many points he's going to put up with a new line like that. Kravtsov hasn't been in the NHL in over a year. Blais has been injured for the last little bit. So it's kind of like the experimental line, in my opinion. It is either going to be really good or really bad. And there's pretty much no in between on that one. And then, my fourth line, I don't really need to comment on it. It's pretty interchangeable with Hunt, Goudreau, and Reeves. Goudreau is definitely the only one I see as a lock on that fourth line center. Reeves might be traded at some point soon. Hunt might be traded at some point soon. We have a lot of other guys in the system who we can call up and send down. So that pretty much covers my projected lines. I think those are the most realistic ones. It's all up to Gerard Gallant on where he wants to put these guys. But the one thing that I can guarantee is that Gerard Gallant did say he does see Lafreniere and Kakko playing top six roles this upcoming season. So definitely expect them there somewhere.
For sure. And I do want to jump into your third line in just a second, but I want to quickly get your take on the fourth line. I just did my solo about Tyler Mott and him potentially being re-signed by the Rangers. Now, the Rangers don't really have a whole lot of cap space. It's very unlikely that they can get Tyler Mott signed under contract, but if they do, you're probably talking about sacrificing two of those guys on that fourth line, or at least one of them with Reeves. And so I'm just kind of curious to know what your perspective is on Tyler Mott, since I did that solo and you didn't get to share your opinions. What's your opinion on Tyler Mott, and should he be a priority for the Rangers this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I love Tyler Mott. The little time that he had with the Rangers, I thought he played phenomenally. He was really a difference maker when he was on the ice. And then you look at like these two other guys who I have on my fourth line, and Hunt and Reeves. Hunt is quite garbage. He's never really played good in my eyes for the Rangers. And Reeves, he's all right, but he doesn't really put up points like Mott does. He's just more of like a physical barrier on the ice, which is something good to have. But I would also like to see a little bit of point production like Mott has. So I would be completely open to possibly trading Hunt or Reeves to open up some cap space to re-sign Mott. I know in your video you said how realistic is it? Not very much. It might not be the smartest decision, but I really do like Mott, and I think if we did have a realistic opportunity to re-sign him, it's definitely something that Chris Drury should try to do.
Well, glad to get your take on that. I definitely think it's something interesting. It's very interesting that Tyler Mott hasn't been signed by a team already. It's almost a week and a half now since the Rangers, since the NHL free agency opened, and a lot of moves have been made. A lot of former Rangers players now have been signed by other teams, and of course, the Rangers did their fair share of damage and signed a bunch of players. But Tyler Mott just sitting out there on the open market for anyone to take, and it'll be interesting to see if the Rangers make him a priority as we move further and further from the opening day of free agency. But I want to get your take once again, just have you dive a little bit deeper on that third line of Blais, Hedel, and Kravtsov. Kind of just talking about the boomer bust potential that they have there and what that could mean for the Rangers 2022 to 23 season. Because, we did a lot of episodes leading up to free agency talking about how the Rangers made it so deep in the playoffs. And this is a team that we thought had limitless potential, a lot of young players. All they need is a second line center, and then they're golden. They can finally make that push into the Stanley Cup Finals. But now we're kind of discussing, after the signing of Vincent Trocheck and after some, roster realigning, some shifting of some players, we're looking at it and we're talking about a third line with a lot of boom or bust. Could that make or break the Rangers this season, in your opinion? Or is their top six so solid that they should be able to make it deep into the playoffs no matter what?
I've always been a firm believer that you can't win a Stanley Cup without having a good depth. Like you look at the playoffs that just finished up, the Rangers were playing phenomenal, but then in that Eastern Conference Final series, our top six kind of disappeared. Our first and second line didn't really start putting up that many points, which kind of left it all in the hands of the kid line and then the fourth line, and it just proved to not be enough to carry us to a Stanley Cup. So you always need to have proper depth just in case your top six fails to produce points like you expect them to. Now, we've definitely improved upon our top six, so hopefully that itself will make it so we never really need to depend on the third or fourth line. But the way you win a Stanley Cup is by having your first two lines scoring a lot of goals, and then your third and fourth line also contributing a decent amount of goals as well to really propel yourself above and beyond the rest of the competition. And when you look at this projected third line I have, that's also the line that I'm the least confident in that it might actually be like that. Goudreau can maybe move up and play as a winger and have someone else slide in on the fourth line center. Reeves might not even be in the lineup. Who knows what'll happen? But I am very excited to watch Kravtsov play. When he had his first stint with the Rangers, he really wasn't anything that special. But then, he went across the Atlantic, played over there for a couple seasons, and he showed a lot of potential. So hopefully now that he's matured a little bit and has developed into a better player, he'll come in and start putting up a lot of points, maybe even slide up to the second line and send Kako back down to the third. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, like you said, we've made a lot of adjustments and a lot of line changes, and we have a pretty similar team to what we had last season, but it's also vastly different at the same time, And I guarantee this lines that we're looking at right now also won't be the same lines that we see going into the playoffs. I'm sure we'll make a very decent trade acquisition at the trade deadline as well to really strengthen the team even more. So, the lines are something that's quite controversial right now. We don't know exactly what they're going to look like. All we can do is predict and hope for the best.
Absolutely. This is just a projection, but it will be interesting to see what changes are made before the season begins and in the middle of the season. That's a good point that you made there. Trade deadline. Rangers are known to be pretty active every year at the trade deadline. So we'll see if Chris Drury gets in his bag around the trade deadline and goes ahead and grabs any additional talent. But I do, right before we wrap up, want to throw out just an alternative line projection. This is from AMNY, and I want to hear your take on this. They have in the second line Panarin, Trocheck, and Kravtsov. And in the third line, they have Julian Gaudier, Philip Hedel, and Capo Caco. And I'm kind of curious to know what you think of those lines and how they compare to your projected lines.
Putting Gauthier up in the second line, that's an interesting take. I don't think he has
They
that
had
much
him in third
potential.
line.
Third line. And who
Second line was
still
Panarin, Trocheck, Kravtsov. Third line, Gaudier, Hedel, and Caco.
I'm not a fan of that lineup. The problem with Kako's development thus far has been the fact that he's been buried away in the bottom six. I think he needs the opportunity to play in the top six on that second line with Trocheck and Panarin. So keeping him on the third line, I'm definitely not a fan of. And then having Gauthier up on the third line, I'm not a fan of it. He hasn't played that well for us in a very long time. And I think there's better players that can easily fit in. I don't even have Gauthier in my lineup. So
That's a good point. You don't have him in your lineup, but I guess that pretty much wraps up our discussion here on where the kids from the kid line will be playing in 2022 to the 23 season. And of course, really, we just did projection of all the lines for the Rangers. And I do have to commend you, my friend Eric, because Ryan Strome no longer on the Rangers, and somehow you still managed to take a shot at him. The tradition continues. The joke will never die, and I love that.
It's not
Eric,
a joke
you bring
anymore.
a great amount of energy to this podcast. It is not a joke. It is the reality. But
It's
anyway,
my
hate Ryan Strome religion. It's a new one that Eric just founded. Let us know in the comment section below if you are going to pledge that religion alongside Eric Wilson. But anyway, make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video. Comment your lines down below. Project the lines for the 2022 to 23 season. And what is your take on all the kids from the kid line? Where should they play? Who's your favorite? Who disappointed you this past season? Give us your thoughts down below in the comment section. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Ring the bell so you don't miss a video. And we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.
He shoots. He scores! He scores! Rangers! Rangers!